Choose any ATM of your convenience and stand a chance to win gold sovereigns.
A U.S. delegation led by Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs Donald Lu arrived in Colombo yesterday as part of an official visit covering India, Sri Lanka and Nepal. The official visit aims to promote sustainable economic growth and strengthen people-to-people ties. USA Deputy Assistant Administrator Anjali Kaur and Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Department Robert Caproth accompanied U.S. Assistant Secretary Donald Lu as he meets senior officials of the newly elected administration. Discussions are expected to deepen ties with the new government, support its efforts to combat corruption, and explore how the United States can support Sri Lanka's governance and economic reform agenda through tailored technical assistance, capacity building, and development programs. Against this backdrop, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Donald Lu called on Foreign Minister Vijay Hera today. The meeting was also graced by U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung. Taking to X messages, U.S. Ambassador Julie Chung noted that the U.S. delegation congratulated Sri Lanka's new administration and discussed shared priorities and also explored ways the two nations can work collaboratively through tailored programs, capacity building, and technical assistance. Chung highlighted that these efforts are aimed at supporting the island nation's economic and governance reforms to benefit its citizens. Thereafter, the U.S. delegation led by U.S. Secretary of State Donald Lu met with Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya and engaged in discussions. The discussion was also attended by U.S. Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chung. In an X message, Ambassador Chung noted that discussions focused on Sri Lanka's priorities and strengthening cooperation in education, agriculture, anti-corruption measures, and equitable economic growth. Ambassador Julie Chung further highlighted that the U.S. delegation reaffirmed U.S. support for Sri Lanka's reform agenda. Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya emphasized the government's commitment to transparency and accountability, highlighting the importance of aligning the education system with economic needs to foster a skilled workforce. The Prime Minister's office reported that discussions also focused on Sri Lanka's IMF program and the role of international partnerships in stabilizing the economy. The U.S. delegation thereafter called on the Speaker of Parliament Ashoka Ranwala and engaged in discussions centered around Sri Lanka's reform priorities and the critical role of Parliament in advancing the Sri Lankan people's mandate of accountability, transparency, and inclusive governance. During the meeting, the U.S. delegation reaffirmed their commitment towards supporting Sri Lanka's democratic institutions and a prosperous future. The delegation also met with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa and discussed the essential role of diverse voices in a vibrant democracy. The discussions focused on priorities such as inclusive governance, accountability, and economic prosperity. The U.S. delegation led by U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Donald Lu also met with representatives of civil societies and shared continued concerns about pending and new legislation such as the Prevention of Terrorism Act, the Online Safety Act, and the NGO Bill. U.S. Ambassador mentioning the meeting in an X message noted that the United States will continue to encourage the new government to incorporate the views of all stakeholders to ensure inclusive dialogue, which is key to advancing democratic governance and protecting human rights. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Donald Lu is slated to conclude his trip in Kathmandu, Nepal, meeting with senior leaders to advance cooperation on environmental protection, women's empowerment, and sustainable development.